Good evening. Welcome to the July 24th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for our invocation and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Lord, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the blessings you've given each and every one of us here in the city of Troy, Michigan. We ask that you continue to bless us this evening and especially be with our first and frontline responders, all those decision makers in this room and throughout our city who are working hard for the benefit of our residents and community as a whole. And tonight, Lord, I ask that you especially give special care to those who are suffering from mental illness disorders or diseases or who are struggling in any fashion with a mental illness issue. It continues to be a very, very serious concern, not just here in Troy, but throughout the country and world. We ask that you be with all of those who need your help and guidance and protect and love and guide every one of us. In his name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll call the July 24th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. We don't have any certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. We have no carryover items and no public hearings. We don't have anyone signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so there'll be no need for reply or response from administration and council. We have no postponed items, so we'll move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. This evening there are no mayoral appointments or city council appointments. I-2 is board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening, and I understand there are no council nominations either. So we move on to I-3, which is a request for a closed session. I'll move I-3, request for closed session, as printed in the agenda packet. Be it resolved that City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268C, Michigan Association of Police.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I-3, request for closed session as read into the agenda, read into the record and printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. At the conclusion of this public meeting, we will recess from here and pick up in closed session in our council boardroom, where I suspect we'll eventually adjourn the entire meeting when appropriate. Next up is I-4, contract ratification, Troy Police Officers Association, TPOA. That'll be introduced by Jeanette Menig, our Human Resources Director. Good evening, Jeanette.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm here to introduce the tentative agreement that the city has reached with the Troy Police Officers Association. The agreement, as presented in the packet, increases wages, shift premiums, and clothing and cleaning allowances. It provides retention incentives through a vacation enhancement and through the addition of longevity-based pay steps. It adds an enhanced dental option for members to choose if they're interested, and it updates several sections of administrative language. The union has held the ratification vote and approved it, and city management supports and recommends ratifying this agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeanette. Any questions from council? Someone like to move the resolution? Member Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4, contract ratification, Troy Police Officers Association, TPOA, as printed in the agenda.
Support. Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve I-4, contract ratification, Troy Police Officers Association, TPOA, as printed in the agenda packet. I believe there was also a late submittal that came late in addition to that as well. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Jeanette and City Management, and of course to our police department as well. Next up is I-5, proposed amendment to Title VII, Business and Trades, Chapter 60, fees and bonds required. There's also a late submittal with this. And that'll be introduced by Meg Schubert, our Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, before you, you have our proposed amendment to Title VII, Businesses and Trades, Chapter 60, Fees and Bonds Required. The late submittal pertaining to this item has the most up-to-date ordinance language in there, and that is consistent with what was presented at the July 10th meeting for the initial reading. Tonight's proposed amendment to Chapter 60 first was brought to the attention of staff that some of our fees and charges for service hadn't been reviewed in about 10 years. So it was time to take a look at a lot of those. One of the main differences in this proposed amendment is removing the itemized fees from being listed individually in Chapter 60 and instead replacing it with a much more comprehensive fee schedule. The fee schedule will allow the opportunity for council to review and adopt the fees annually instead of waiting for many years in the interim there. The fees were the result, or the proposed increases are the result of comparative research that was conducted from 9 sample communities looking at the city of Troy and how we compared to our surrounding municipalities.
Thanks, Meg. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the hard work the city staff put into this. Question is, there have been updates to the fee schedule. How will this be communicated to the public and users who will need to engage this? And how will they understand kind of the why behind why we need to do this?
Absolutely. So the creation of the fee schedule really does have our residents in mind. It's going to be one of the first times that our residents of Troy are going to be able to find a full list, a comprehensive list of city fees versus the few that were listed in Chapter 60 or possibly having to go to different areas to find their fees. They're now going to have one spot that they can go to look up all of the fees. This is going to be communicated. It will be on our website. We will have some social posts that will draw attention to the fact that this has changed, and we'll have hard copies in the areas of the library in the same spots that we would, and with the clerk's office where we would put, a copy of the budget as well.
That's great.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Councilmember Abraham.
Can you, since this is a very large late submittal, can you highlight what's changed between what was posted Thursday versus what we see before us today?
There is no changes between what was posted on July 10th versus what you see today. The late submittal is the result of a different version of the ordinance amendment making it to the agenda packet, and that was caught today. But what you saw on July 10th is consistent with what the late submittal was, and there were no changes in the interim. The specific language that is different is going to be in the section 60.02.
Okay. One follow-up question. Is the thought that the yearly updates would be coincident with the budget cycle since it's all tied to a fiscal year?
Absolutely, yes. So the idea would be that we would review and council would review and approve the annual fee schedule consistent with the budget.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Mayor?
City Attorney Bloom?
I know this is unusual, but because we do have a lawsuit regarding fees, I just want to make sure that there is clarity. And so I just had a question. I just wanted to make sure that in setting these fees that there was consideration as to the city's actual costs. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. That was one of the greatest factors in reviewing these fees are the cost to actually provide the service from the staff and the resources needed to do so.
Thank you.
It's what, 12 years of litigation. Sorry. All right. Any other questions? Someone would love to move this resolution. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, proposed amendment to Title VII, Business and Trades, Chapter 60, Fees and Bonds Required, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-5, proposed amendment to Title VII, Business and Trades, Chapter 60, Fees and Bonds Required, including the language in the late submittal. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Councilmember Hamilton.
I just want to mention, as I always do, that this includes road construction on John R. from 14 Mile to Maple Road. What is the timeline for that? Is that going to happen next year? We're utilizing Tri-County funds, so the city contribution to that is very small. So, but yeah, that'll be John R., 14 Mile to Maple Road. That whole area's got a lot of stuff going on.
I want to say I believe it's going to happen this construction season.
Okay, great. Stay out of that area. There's a lot going on there right now.
Unless there's a business in there, please
Yes,
continue to
yeah, of
patronize
course,
them
of course.
as we would any other in the city. Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, all have been approved. Next up is memorandums and future council agenda items. I have K1 to announce, announcement of a public hearing, August 7th, 2023, a street vacation request, SVJPLN 2023-001, request to vacate an unconstructed alley approximately 18 feet wide by 115 feet long, west of John R. and south of Larchwood, abutting PIN parcel number 8820-26-433-021, 1980 Larchwood to the west, PIN 88-20-26-433-020 to the south, and PIN 88-20-26-433-019 to the east, platted as part of John R. Garden subdivision located between Lot 259 to the west and Lot 65 through 70 to the east in section 26. So again, that public hearing will be at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on August 7th, 2023. And also K2 is a memorandum, proposed amendments to Chapter 10 of Troy Ordinances Retirement Board. I did see that proposed language and our discussion in there. City Attorney Bloom or City Manager Miller, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
I would just add that this is just part one of the changes that are needed for Chapter 10, but as always, if you have any suggested revisions, we'd like to hear them ahead of time. This is the first reading of it, so please let us know as soon as possible. Absent any objections, we will be bringing back this language to City Council, and then we are continuing to work on other changes to Chapter 10, which you will see at a later time.
City Manager Miller, thank you, Lori.
I want to go backwards to the street vacation. I don't think anyone on this council has reviewed a street vacation request, but when this public hearing occurs, we'll have Community Development Director Savadat kind of explain why it's coming to City Council. But you have the authority over roads and what to do with it. And it did go to the Planning Commission for a recommendation of approval, or to vacate, approval of the vacation.
Thank you. Okay, next up is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have one resident signed up this evening. Diane Cipoletti, please come forward. The rules, as stated in our council rules of procedure, you have 3 minutes, of course. The timer will be in front of you. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left. When it turns red, your time will be up. Thank you. If you have a handout, please hand to the clerk. Thank you. Make sure you pull the mic down a little bit too. There you go.
Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Baker and City Council members. I gave each of you copies of the open burning requirements to reacquaint yourself with it. In section 307.1.1 states, open burning that is offensive or objectionable because of smoke or odor emissions or atmospheric conditions or local circumstances make such fires hazardous, shall be prohibited. could you please pass a resolution to prohibit burning on air quality alert days? It will enhance the health, safety, and welfare of all of our residents. Thank you in advance for your thoughtful consideration on this matter, and a big thank you to Mayor Baker for his quick reply to the email I sent to him and all the city council members last week. We had 28 air quality alert days so far this year. The news has reported we are going to have a bad air quality alert day tomorrow. Stay safe out there.
Thank you. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Next is an opportunity for City Council and City Administration to respond and reply to public comment from that discussion. I'll just start and say, Dan, thank you for coming forward. Thank you for sending the email last week. I know City Management, I believe, received a copy as well. I know I forwarded it. They're looking into some of the questions we had about it, or I had specifically. We'll get some kind of response from them, I would expect, in the coming week or so. Something to definitely look at. I don't know why someone would want to have a bonfire when there's an air quality alert day anyway, but I understand there's people that do a lot of different things. But we'll certainly look at what we can do and what we think would be best, and if anything, and look forward to hearing something in response. City Management, you have anything to add to that?
No.
Sounds about right. All right. Thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Anyone else? Sorry. Okay. All right. There are no council referrals this evening, so we move on to reports. We have several reports this evening. As I read the reports, it seems there's a couple things council maybe we should have a little discussion tonight. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, and that certainly relates to the signage and logo memo or report. I also think I'll have a few comments about the aquatic center. I think if it's all right, I'd like to start with the signage and logo. I think I don't know if it's a full recommendation, but it is a recommendation that staff is recommending bringing the rebranding process as a potential Troy Advanced topic. Is that a fair analysis, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the memo very much and the report. I think it is very comprehensive, which I value that, and it's good for those of us who've been on a while and those who've been on less while to see kind of the background through all this. I wish we could have had some of this information prior to the last several times that I've sought consensus to move forward with those park signs, because I think what's missing from this report is the fact that this council has given consensus to move forward with the signs that are at the Gene Einstein Community Park. And I feel like a lot of time has been lost as a result of that. I don't know how council feels. I mean, you've read this report. I have absorbed some of it. Anybody have any comments specifically about? I mean, I'm supportive of if council wants to do a big branding or logo rebranding at an advance. I mean, so be it. I can see the reasons why it might be a good idea. I can also see why it might not, but just curious what council thought as a whole, if you feel like sharing. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's always a good thing to review and consider our branding. And I appreciate the fact that the process is that you begin with your logo and move to branding. That's kind of the opposite. You start with deciding, what is the message that you want to send, and then come up with your logo and signage and so forth after that. So I do appreciate the recommendation of a more thoughtful process. My concern is, and this goes to what you were saying about how we've asked to move forward on this, we do have a fair amount of signs in the city that need attention. And my concern is if we wait till November, that again means that we have signs that probably should be replaced sooner rather than later. So maybe what would be helpful is to have an assessment of which signs might need replacement sooner than November, or at least get the process rolling sooner than November. just my thoughts.
And I think any new signage resulting from this topic being discussed at the December advance, we're probably a year after that before any signs, I mean, based on previous experience. But I would agree, I mean, I'll tell you right now, the community center sign is falling apart, and it has 2 logos ago, right? So I know that's a concern. I don't know if there's a temporary measure for something like that. But I appreciate those comments. I think that's a good question, good thinking point also.
Yeah, could we maybe do like a 2-step kind of process? Maybe deal with some of the signs that are more in distress now, and then in terms of a global signage, then that could wait until we have decided if we want to change our branding.
I like that. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Carranga.
So I have been asking about community center signage for a while. I go there most mornings to swim, and so I see the old signage. I think part of the issue, I think this is a good point, like maybe there's a short stop gap we can fill with some key areas, but if there's no money in the budget, so that's a question for City Manager Miller. If there's no money in the budget for the signs, could we do some updates to central locations like the community center before November?
We definitely could consider it if that's the direction you would like to go. I guess I would like to discuss it with our CFO before I say yes, unilaterally.
So my opinion on this is I agree with what we've said is the best branding and logo, it comes out of a conversation. It comes out of who we are as a city and what do we want to project. If you read the history, there was in the past when they developed those logos, there were those conversations. And I think it would be valuable at our advance as a council after the election to come together and be able to have that conversation. So given there's no money in the budget, and given we've never really talked about the big picture of who we are and our values and our vision, I personally can wait until the advance to have that, with the hope that very soon coming into a new fiscal year or right afterwards, maybe some of those key locations, we could make an update. I would rather be thoughtful and get this right than to have regrets and want to have something different down the road. So I'm fine to wait.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Hoderick?
This is one of those situations where all things can be true at the same time, and all comments I'm nodding to. I've lost track. Are the signs, the small signs when people drive into the borders of the city that are rusted, have those were never replaced either, or have they been replaced?
They do not have the logo which we currently use.
They go back, plus they're rusted.
Yes, they're
Faded.
rusty
and
and faded.
And
And the
I don't-
terminology for those signs which Public Works uses, tertiary signs.
tertiary signs, okay. I call them the border signs, I guess I'm close as a layman's person here. I don't know if there's some reason I personally would take those down if we're going to wait, because they do not reflect what I think the city should look like. And every time I drive through and I see those, and maybe some people don't even notice them, and it's somebody like me that notices them, but the rusted out look just makes it look like a tired city, and we're not a tired city. So they're not reflective of who we are. I don't know if there's a generic, I thought at a previous meeting we said even just a City of Troy clean blue and white without a logo, not rusted, would be something we could do. But if we need to wait, and there is an issue with waiting, because it's another 6, 7, 8 months of when I feel like this has been an issue for a while. So that said, I also absolutely agree about having the values, the logo discussion. The current logo, we didn't quite get the opportunity to do that in the manner that is best. And so I'm supportive. I am supportive of what was recommended here. I'm also concerned about rusted signs on our borders. So I don't know what the solution is. If you're looking for dialogue, that's my dialogue, I
That's
guess.
good. Yeah, that's, the tertiary signs are embarrassing, for lack of a better term, I think. I mean, the park signs don't even have our logo on them, right? So there's no immediate need to change the park signs. They predate, I think, even what's the gazebo logo, because they have no logo at all. So that's, I think, a separate issue than the tertiary signs. I don't know what can be done. I don't know what legally is, if there's a requirement. If not, I know, when you're on the I-75, it says Troy City Limits, and that's it. It's a green sign. I mean, that's one thing. It doesn't have a logo. I don't know how that specific works, but I am completely supportive of talking about a rebranding with a new council, because it will be a different council at the advance. And also talking about all the things we've talked about, whether it's values and how that plays out. I think that's an important conversation to have, and coming then from COVID into the challenges we've faced and things we've dealt with over the past year, I think it's a good time to do that. So I think that is a great recommendation, and I would love to have that as part of the agenda for the advance. I do share the same concerns about the tertiary signs, and so if there is something that specifically can relate to those, I think that would make me at least think, okay, we've talked about this as a council publicly for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. There's been consensus a few times to move forward. Budgetary changes happen, I understand that. But my understanding of all of that is this is, from a budget standpoint, it's not a huge impact, depending on what you do with it. So that's kind of where my thinking is. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in. If there's something to weigh in on. Councilmember Hamilton.
Yeah, I just remembered that our discussion before was how much we liked the Gene Stein Park sign, and that we could just do that as quickly as possible, and that would be a great start. So I wouldn't mind doing that now, and we can have the rebranding discussion, but I feel like that's a longer term thing. So I'm more on board with speeding things up.
I'm with you. That's where I'm actually, I mean, if truthfully, I mean, it has the current logo on that sign, not the colorful aspect of it, but, and so you don't want to do new signs and then new signs again a year or two later, although part of me says I kind of do want to do that, I'll be really honest, because I think we've given direction to do that, and I don't know, we may go through a whole process and decide not to change the logo also, but I know that's a risk for some people, maybe that's not the best thing, but I'm with you, David. I'm a little, my trepidation here is that I do like that park sign, and I thought we all gave consensus to do that, and that's where I'm a little bit stuck. So, but I don't know if that ultimately makes the most fiscal sense. It's a risk, I calculate. I mean, right?
I know, but we keep kicking the can down the road.
I know,
I know,
2019, we
yeah.
didn't approve the previous signs, and here we are 4 years later,
Right.
and nothing's changed. A lot of circumstances, like I said, so I hear you, Anyone want to add on to that? Councilmember Brooks?
I also remember the discussion about kind of using the Gene Stein Park, kind of for continuity in that area. I don't recall, though, what the cost was. Did we say how much it would cost to do that? To put that?
We had an estimate, I can't remember, but was it 300,000? I can't remember.
I thought it was a little less than that.
A little less than that, yeah.
I thought it was more like 180.
Okay, but
that's also a lot of money, but I don't think it was that. But maybe the variance was if you included Civic Center property signs or not. But I do like the style, for sure.
Yes, no,
Logo aside.
and I thought that would be good for continuity for right now. I definitely agree with the thorough discussion during the advance, because I think, I remember, I wasn't on council, but I remember the whole discussion about the signage and kind of rebranding and logo and things like that for the city before, and then it kind of got dropped off. And so I definitely think we need to pick that back up and rediscuss, because it is important. It's very important how our city is presented and how we, appear to the outside, community. So, I definitely think we need to have that discussion at the advance. I think it's reasonable to move forward with, kind of for continuity, having the signage, like the Gene Stein Park that we had talked about. And then, I don't know, for the tertiary signs, I don't know. I don't know how much it would cost to take them down or put up something that, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I guess it kind of comes down to the cost as well, because we want to be fiscally responsible in this decision-making, so.
Right. I'm wondering, for continuity, I mean, our current park signs don't have the logo at all, but what would the Gene Stein Park sign look like without the logo? But if they were at least matching that style, is that a possibility? And then if a council in 5 years changes the logo again, it won't matter, right? I mean, that's potentially something that may be a good idea. Well, City Manager Miller, were you?
Yes, I want
Go
to
ahead.
speak, and
Yeah.
I did want to interrupt the
Yeah.
council discussion. So the current logo, okay, so I'm talking about my trepidation, what I don't like. The current logo was never approved by city council ever.
Right.
It was implemented by the previous city manager. I don't want to perpetuate this logo any longer, personally, and I would like council eventually to have a professional process to determine a new logo and image for the city that's not based upon what the previous city manager unilaterally implemented. And that's been my trepidation all along about this, is that I don't want to continue this logo going forward and put it on signs and things of that nature when it was forced down the throat of this city by the previous city manager.
Totally respect that, Mark. Again, I wish we would have had that conversation a year or two ago when we were giving consensus to move forward. So that's my concern. But I appreciate you being forthright with that, and I understand that, and I know, 7 years ago, I remember when I was on council, when the logo came out, and I remember there were a lot of, oh, where did that come from? Yeah, I've since heard the story of where that came from, and now I kind of see it in writing too. So I appreciate that, and we all do. If everyone's spoken on that, does anyone want to speak before we go second round? Except for me, I've done like 5 rounds, apologize. Councilmember Abraham?
Like Mr. Miller, I've never really been super fond of the logo. It doesn't have that timeless aspect to it, and frankly, that's what gave us a lot of pause back in 2019 when we were looking at getting the larger, more ornate signs at the borders. That said, there are some of the larger signs that are in great disrepair, like the community center. I think that's the one that's draws the most attention to how shabby it is. The Gene Stein Park sign is fantastic. That without the logo, maybe that's the path forward. Because if you look at all the other park signs, yes, they might have a different style, but they never had a logo on it. I mean, I pass J.C. Park every day, pretty much. There's no logo on it. You know you're in Troy. You know what city park it is. And so I feel like I think there's, and maybe an unofficial triage list of which signs are the worst, those large signs, I'm not talking about the tertiary ones. If we can find a way forward to address those worst of the worst and have a sign without a logo but in the style of the Gene Stein Park, I think that's going to move the conversation in a more productive way. Those signs are a lot more timeless than the logo, quite frankly. Although in black and white, it's not as bad.
Correct. I agree. That's a good point. All right. Councilmember Hunt.
Go to it.
Okay.
I don't know who puts their hand up first if I'm looking the other way, but go ahead, Mayor.
I'm happy to. I think I know where I am on this. So I also was with council when we said, yes, we like those Gene Stein signs, and we'd love to see those replaced, more of the signs in the city with that look and feel. As I think about it, I still agree with that when it comes to the Civic Center campus, and in particular around the community center. I think the reason why I like those signs is they have this urban kind of steel, aluminum feel, and it looks good with the community center. Community center has kind of a steel, urban feel, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure how those signs would look in front of the Stage Nature Center. I'm not sure how those signs would look coming into the city. I'm not sure how those signs would look in front of Raintree Park. So for me, I could give consensus, even tonight, to say, let's look into, forget even the whole Civic Center campus, but maybe just all around the Troy Community Center, replacing those signs with with the same look and feel of the sign in front of the Gene M. Stein Park. I can be comfortable with that. But in terms of all other signs, even I believe on the rest of the Civic Center campus, and given that we have discussion that's in the city manager's report around the future of City Hall, I don't think I can give consensus tonight around changing the other signs in the city. I would like to go through a process. Now that we have a professional, we have Tori, and Tori can also tell us if we need outside support as well to guide us in that process. So that's where I'm at. I can support the community center, changing all those right away, and even taking down the gateway signage that I do go by quite a bit, and I see, and I always notice every single time. The other thing I would just throw out there is maybe instead of waiting until the advance, could we have at least one study session between now and then? I know it's this current council, which I love, and maybe just start the conversation of some of those initial values and principles and start with that. And then we take that into the advance because I worry that this conversation could take over the advance and we got a lot of meaty things we need to do. But I'm open to working hard and doing some study sessions leading up to the advance to kind of help us start. But I'm also, as I said, I can give consensus tonight to the community center area, fixing up all those signs and creating a common look and feel, if there's money in the budget.
All right, that's good. I got some thoughts on that. And Councilmember Hoderick?
Backing up to when we did consents on the Gene Stein style sign, I think what we liked about it is that we thought it was timeless, that that the signs at our parks are very dated looking in terms of colors. And so if timeless is, if I'm correct, and I don't want to speak for my fellow council members, but I'm remembering the conversation that we thought the look of that was timeless. And one of the things that can make it timeless is it doesn't necessarily have to have the logo on it. Like the mayor said, our current park signs don't. Maybe the way that we refresh those in a timeless way, intentionally do it without a logo is, I guess, what I'm suggesting that we consider. I don't know that that's the right answer, but in a sense, we're having a study session conversation right now on this. Maybe we intentionally, we go about this in a two-pronged way. We keep those as timeless as possible, but consistent and refreshing at the same time. We're refreshing Big Beaver and we're refreshing, the whole city has a sense of refreshment versus one packet having it. That's always an issue for us. If a refresh happens in one corner of the city and it doesn't happen in others, residents wonder why. So part of the rationale of our discussion was that we would see this refreshing happening. The sign, the Gene Stein, was consistent with what we're doing on Big Beaver, I think. So I guess I just want to throw those thoughts around to kick that around. I'm fully supportive of the logo discussion. I just want to be clear about that. I totally get that. But I'm wondering if what we wanted to do in our original consensus still makes sense when we just talk about doing it in a way that is as timeless as possible.
Ironically, 4 years ago, we had a conversation, different council, different mayor and everything, and we were like, you'll never get 7 of us to agree on anything. I remember some of the other council members saying that. So, there's always that concern as well, and my original thought was, we all 7 of us agreed to move forward with that sign to mimic the Gene M. Stein sign. I think you have consensus absolutely to make this a topic, the brand, rebranding, the logo. discussion at the advance, right? I mean, that's the easy part, so we've got that. I still am not sure where everyone is as the current signs, what we should do. I have a couple thoughts. I was listening to Mayor Pro Tem speak a little bit, and I don't know that I fully agree. I don't disagree, but I don't know if I fully agree, because I think that part of I don't know if it makes sense to just have a consistency in one small little part of the city, right, and different signage elsewhere. And if the Gene M. Stein Community Park is a park, that sign should probably match what our other parks have. It would be strange, although it doesn't now, but that's the point, right? I mean, I think that's the concern. I had a question, I don't know, as it relates to the community center, I guess it's not just a Troy Recreation, because I was thinking, well, is the Troy Rec logo going to change? Because if you wanted to put a logo on the community center, that one would make sense, but I guess the community center is more than just recreation. It's the whole city, but I was just thinking, if you're trying to put a logo on that, because that sign to me, the tertiary signs I think are really awful. Some of them more awful than others, but the community center sign is equally as awful, I think, and I know Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranko, you've spoken about it a lot, and it's right here in a prominent location, and it's got peeling letters from 2 logos ago, and I just don't know, if we're going to come up with consensus on a design that we all like enough, that feels timeless and that makes sense to wait. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. And I guess I had another question. We're about to open, hopefully, in the winter, the pavilion and the skating amenity. Is there signage related to that? And is there going to be, I mean, my vision was that it would mimic the Gene Stein signage if there was, because it's an extension of that park. But now I'm hesitant if we don't know what we're going to do. I guess you don't need signage right away, but it would kind of completes it too. So I don't know. I don't expect an answer right at this moment on that. To your point about whether or not those signs would fit in the other parks, I can feel that, and I'm picturing it sort of, and wondering the same thing. Maybe a schematic of a couple parks would help us see a visual. I think, again, so I think there's consensus, like I said, for the advance to make this a discussion. I think there's probably consensus for city management to come back to us with some additional thoughts on potentially what you could do with the signage, maybe some options for us. I think there's some similarities, and we want to see something done before we do a whole logo change. Maybe each of us have a little different view of what that is, but if city management could provide maybe some different options or additional thoughts, starting with budget, of course, that would probably be wise, and whether it needs a study session or whether it needs what, we'll have to see from there. Yeah.
So I heard one of the council members say we need a sign triage, and I think I agree. And, which ones are the worst ones and which ones need to be replaced now, basically. And then we'll, have to think about how we can do that in a non-logo way. We'll put our mind to it a little bit. And the other thing I want to caution council on is people are having their opinion that a sign is timeless. And I think that council at this moment is not in a position to know what the community wants, because you need to do appropriate community engagement to determine what the community wants. Our individual opinions don't necessarily, they matter, but without having appropriate engagement, we don't know what the community wants. Because remember when we were here a couple years ago with the other logo, and there were some people who just flatly hated it, saying that it wasn't what Troy was. So ultimately, to move towards a new logo and brand, you have to do an engagement process. And I will warn you that some of the examples that were provided, those took 4 years for one community in California with significant dollars to accomplish it. So I just wanted to get that out there and then reiterate that I think what we can do is do a signage triage and look at what type of options there might be to take care of the signs that are falling apart or aren't working. Can we eliminate some of the tertiary signs? I'm not, is that a possibility? I think we certainly definitely can do that, and then follow up and look at the logo and branding for the long term at the Advance. That's what I'm hearing.
Totally agree with that in a sense. I think there's a difference between community engagement for logo and rebranding and extensive community engagement for a sign.
Okay, I
think
agree
those are
with
two
one-
different things. So I just
was
want to make
saying
sure
if-
we're not making that 4-year process turn into 8 years,
Right.
you know, because that's what can happen with that. And I'm all for community engagement, as all of us are.
Right,
So.
but what I heard is a council member saying that sign is timeless, but that's that person's opinion, it's not the community's opinion. And you can't, I mean, a council can make that decision and say that we want the sign because we think it's timeless, but that doesn't necessarily mean the community's going to think it's timeless. Because each place that the sign is put at is a different context. As, you know, whether it's at the nature center is really not a modern area. It's somewhat rustic. You know, will it be appropriate in that location? I'm not saying yes or no, but I think that that is probably the one that sticks out. So, you know, we can give this a little bit more thought, and I understand where council is moving towards, and I do believe that it's very appropriate to fix and get rid of signs that are falling apart. I agree with that.
Councilmember Hoderick.
I think at the time when we consensed, and why I'm mentioning the timelessness of it, was because it was in the context of the design studies that had been presented to us about the Big Beaver District. And we saw a consistency with that had been played out and had been getting really good design input from respected people. And so we were connecting with that investment in the input for Big Beaver. Now, we could be second guessing ourselves now and saying, well, maybe that's not right. And maybe that's the case, but that's where the timelessness came out of, because the planning for Big Beaver, we were trying to do a Michigan natural look, four-season look, and the dialogue that we had at the time was that we felt that that sign that we were consenting to put at our parks was reflective of that sense, which had gotten input. We had had hearings on, we had had, you know, involvement. So I just don't want those that are watching to think that we were capriciously giving some sort of design recommendation without any further context back when we did. We're taking, the logo is causing us to take a step back. One of the things that has been timeless in the city, if you look at our police, fire, DPW, is the seal, choosing the city seal for some of the more just very city-specific formal presence and identity. And, you know, maybe that's where I'm also thinking of timelessness. When you see any truck that is a city truck, it has that seal. It's never had a gazebo logo. It's never had this current logo that just came upon us. It's that long-term seal. I say that out loud because I don't know if that's an answer, but I think there's value in that identity that especially our first responder community connects with, and I think our residents connect with when they see that. So as we have this dialogue going into the Advance, you know, maybe that's something that we continue to kick around. We do use that in a timeless way and have for a very long time in key areas of the city. In terms of the engagement, I hear your caution loud and clear, City Manager, and I guess, again, back with the time when we consensed, I was feeling like we had some of that. Could we do a deeper engagement? Of course. And what I'm sensing is that city administration would wish that we would do that. And that's something I would like to take to heart, that counsel and guidance. I don't know what that means going
I
forward.
don't know. I don't know if we're, anyone else? It's a good conversation. For those of you who don't know, this is a report that's in our agenda. You can look it up online, and it's a very lengthy report. Might have come out of nowhere to you a little bit. City Manager Miller, I'm with you. I understand. I appreciate the perspective. I appreciate the baggage from the previous city manager. I understand all of that. I still am a little bit hung up on, from a cautionary tale standpoint, a council that gives consensus to do something, coming back later and saying, no, you shouldn't do that, because if it's educational, I get that, and I appreciate that, but there's two sides to this, and to a certain point, it's on us if we pick something that's not timeless enough to the community. So yes, that's a warning to us, but also sometimes we have to make some decisions, and I thought we had to a certain extent. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. And no, again, timeless means one thing to everyone in this room, and if you tried to define it and explain it, it might be tough. So I get that, and that's part of the difficulty in this. And you look when other communities do things, whether it's public art, whether it's signage, whether it's a golden ring on Hall Road. I mean, there's always people in the community who see things differently. So that's something we're going to face. Although to date, I haven't heard one negative comment about the Gene M. Stein Community Park sign. So not that I talked to everyone in the city, but I mean, there hasn't been a big outcry against that, and I take that as a good sign as well. So I think what you came back to us with, as far as your understanding of where we're at, makes sense. I would hope that triage is one thing, but if there's an opportunity to give us some potential for something more than just removing some broken signs, you can provide that to us. Meaning, if you think there's a feasible path to provide us with something for replacement of some of these signs, or even an opportunity to look at the park signs to be consistent without the logo, we can continue to have that conversation. And please speak to CFO Malzek, budgetary, all that, of course, which I know you would anyway. So I think that's just one of the reports. There's a lot of stuff. So I'll take a step back. Anyone have any other comments on the other reports? I certainly do. But Councilmember Hamilton?
Just with the Aquatic Center, I mean, this is obviously going to be discussed at the advance. I mean, we have to decide, we're either going to have to subsidize this through the general fund, or we're going to have a dedicated funding source, or we're going to have to get other options. So, I mean, this is going to be one of the major topics there, amongst many major topics. So it's going to be a long Saturday, but
It's only 2 days. Any additional comments on the Aquatic Center, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
I do. So I've looked really closely into this report, and I have to say, overall, the meat of this agenda as residents is in the reports. There are a lot of very important reports. So with this, I know that we had requested, I think we also gave consensus, it's in this, there's a lot of connection between this report as well as the city manager's report. Kind of consensus that we did want some form of community engagement around TFAC. What I saw in the report, and I'm grateful to, we have an expert, we have Tori now, and there's going to be an engagement plan put together, I believe by the end of August it'll be ready, is what I saw in the city manager's report. The only point of discomfort I have right now is in December, we need to make a decision, I believe it's for $200,000 around new boilers that TFAC needs. Ideally, I would like to have had the community engagement earlier this summer and to have that information going into making a pretty costly decision. And I don't know at this point, because it's already, I mean, basically it is end of July, so, there really, there's nothing we can do about that. But is there a way, I guess the question is, could we postpone making a decision on the boilers? Does it have to be made in August to be ready to open in 2024, or could we do that a few months later after we have an engagement plan? And although I'm not sure how we're going to go about that when TFAC is closed, but I mean, there's ways we can do that, of course. But first question, could we postpone it? And again, we wouldn't jeopardize its opening, because I don't want to jeopardize its opening for 2024.
I don't mean to defer, but Mr. Bruner might be able to answer that more specifically.
Yeah, the boiler project was actually, staff had it ready to go on this agenda, and I postponed it till the next agenda because I wanted to give City Council's kind of financial snapshot of where the Aquatic Center Fund is right now. The Aquatic Center Fund is weird because when city staff presents you the budget in spring, fund balance is positive, it's projected to be positive. When it goes negative, the money it's advanced from the general fund to the aquatic center fund. That happens when the financial statements are prepared, which City Council isn't involved with. You're just presented the financial statements. So it's this really kind of oddball situation. So I wanted to pause and make sure City Council kind of knew where we were, because the direction coming out of last year's advance was to open this year, which we've done. The boiler project, we can bring that to City Council on the next agenda. It's ready to go, and then have those conversations about how long can we delay this. But it's work that has to be done outdoors, so I don't know if it can be done in winter. And B, there's a long lead time on the materials potentially. So we are kind of inadvertently in this situation where it's only July 2024 and City Council is well, it'll be August by the time it gets to you. You're being presented with something which is not just about opening TFAC this year, but opening it next year and so forth. So that project, or that project to replace the boilers will be on the next regular agenda, and I anticipate that's when you can have a more robust conversation about it.
Thank you. On another report.
Before we go on to that, more aquatic center comments? I'll go. I think this is a great report. I think it absolutely shows what the history lately has been and where we're projected to go. I think there's always probably going to be confusion to a resident as to how this is funded in general. I don't think most residents think of this as an enterprise fund. I think this is something the city of Troy provides for them, and they pay, and that's kind of the way it works. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of that mindset myself. That's why it doesn't concern me too much to subsidize the enterprise fund from the city perspective, because I think we're providing a community benefit, which is something we're tasked with doing. I recognize a good percentage of the users are not Troy residents, and I think that's where it gets a little dicey. I know in previous years we've asked about the feasibility of taking this out of an enterprise fund and making it part of general government or recreation in some respect. I don't know if we ever received a report or response to how that would work or if that's possible. I think probably not. I think we decided maybe to wait and talk about it at the next, whatever the next point was going to be. And I just want to know if we can we please include that conversation as well. I think that is important. Maybe irresponsibly, I'll say right now, I am not a fan of, like, if we are not going to approve these boilers and decide to shut down the aquatic center for next year, I think that's a really big thing to talk about, and to have it be hinged on $200,000 purchase of boilers is not probably in our best interest as a community. So I hope we can find an alternative to that. I also think that it's over 30 years old now, and we all know we need to talk about what it's going to do into the future. My personal preference is not to just shut it down, it's to continue to utilize it if and enhance it as necessary. That would be my initial snapshot, take on it. So I'm not supportive of not doing the boilers and then not opening it next year. I'm nowhere near being comfortable with that kind of decision. So just a heads up, I guess, to everybody on council. But again, I think this report is very clear on a number of things. I can't figure out why fiscal year 22 has so many people going compared to, 4 times the year before, and double the 2 years before that, and almost double 3 years before that. Maybe weather. If it's as simple as weather and COVID and lifeguards and all of that.
The county shut down.
The county shutting down their pools.
Yeah.
That's a good point too.
I think.
That probably plays a role as well. So yeah, it's just interesting to me. I think if somebody saw just those numbers, they'd say you're talking about shutting down a pool when there's been a 4-fold increase in attendance over the last year. They would think something's really off. So we need to be mindful of all of these things, and ideally look at what really needs to be done with proper community engagement, but for the viability of our recreation at Aquatic Center. The idea of losing another key component of our recreation and facilities just seems like a really bad idea. So, again, my opinion, 1 of 7, but that's where I'm at right now. But look forward to continuing to talk about this, and I guess we'll be talking about it more in 2 weeks as we talk about the boilers, right? All right. Next report, Mayor Pro Tem Chairman Krange, what else do you have?
Okay, I'll dive away. Did just want to mention briefly, touch upon, it was O02D, the community engagement plan for Site 11 with the new public-private partnership with the Sports League Foundation. Just want to thank, again, want to thank Tori for that. That's exactly something like I've been looking for, and it's so great to see that. I'm just great that we have this kind of capacity. And for me, I think that also is, not to go back to the other report on logos and signage, but I had a certain sense of confidence, but now that we have an in-house expertise and that is coming to us through a report suggesting that maybe we just need to pause, especially given we don't have budget for some of those items, but we have in-house expertise, I want to take advantage of that. That's what we've been craving and we want, and I really appreciate this. It's a fine example in this community engagement plan. So look forward to more, and I know at the end of August, Tori will have a wider community engagement plan that will include TFAC and others, and I'm very excited about that. So look forward to it. Bigger report?
Totally, just on that, absolutely awesome to see a plan for community engagement presented to us in advance, something ready to go that's timely and covers the bases we need. So thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Final thing was the city manager's status report. So great to see that. That is a status report to residents coming out of, we do a yearly strategy session. We call it the advance, where we're thinking of the year ahead, our priorities in the budget. And this is a chance for the city manager to give an update in terms of what we had given consensus over, things we wanted to focus on. So, very helpful to see. One question I did have, and I know it wasn't a topic that we talked about the advance. Well, it did come up, but wasn't one of those very key burning priorities that the city needed input from us. But we were hearing a lot about was around sustainability and having a study session. So just wanted to check back in and see the status of doing a study session. I know we originally had talked about maybe July, but then we've also, with the master plan, we needed some time with that. So, I understand. So just wanted to get an update. And the reason why it's also timely is I shared with, we got a very nice email from the Chief Environmental Sustainability Officer at Oakland County sharing that Troy has already been allocated over $153,000 for energy-related projects. And essentially, this is all about our energy security as a city. And so also, I don't know where, if that's something that the city is interested in pursuing, or Mark, you can comment on that. But we already have the money, we just have to submit something for it. But it's actually, my understanding, it's allocated, and the county is offering to help us as needed. But just, it continues to come to us, things on energy and efficiency, sustainability. So yeah, just wondering how some of those things are moving forward amidst all the other key priorities in the status report.
So first, sustainability, we'd like the opportunity to submit a written report for the next agenda. And then the EECBG, we have done some research, and once again, I want to put that into a report and give that to City Council. Because that, off the top of my head, but I don't know exactly, but that grant funding comes with some significant strings, and one of them being Davis-Bacon, which is wages. But I would rather wait for the report.
Thank you, City Manager Miller. Councilmember Hamilton.
Just to add, I was going to mention this in council comments, but it's brought up now, so I'm going to talk about it now. The sustainability special meeting, yeah, I'd like to have that very soon come up on the agenda so we can find a date for it. I'd like to start talking about it. I know August is a no-go for me, but we can have council. I was thinking like maybe September might be a good time, or October might be too in election time, but so I kind of think September is a good time, but I'd like to see where staff and council's at. I wouldn't mind that being a discussion item at the next meeting. Just plan that. If we can't decide then, that's fine too, but I'd like at least see it on the agenda. If we can get consensus for that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if your report was going to include whether or not study session planning as well, or could it include that?
Yes, it will include that.
Okay.
Sure, great.
Good on that. Awesome. Awesome. Where are we? Reports still? Any other comments on the reports? Okay. Council comments. Man. Any council comments that we haven't discussed? I actually have two. Sorry, city management, and I know that we're peppering you with a lot tonight, but my first is actually a little bit related to sustainability, and I just wanted to ask here, City Manager Miller, if there has been any further discussions with the county as it relates to our LDFA and electric vehicle chargers? Have they been able to set up that meeting? I know one was canceled by them back in
Yeah,
February.
we have not had an additional meeting. We have not scheduled that yet.
Okay. I just wanted to check and see, because I know County Executive Coulter seemed favorable to him, but it's not him that's having the meeting, so I just wanted to know if that had come up before I go back to him, frankly. So thank you for that. The other thing I have a question about it is it relates to the reflective head statue.
Yes.
And it was moved, for those of you who didn't know, and it's in a temporary place. But I was wondering how you plan to engage council or the community on what to do with it and where you would like to put it and the timing for something like that, if you had any idea of that at this point. I know
We have some ideas, and once again, I think that should be a thorough report about what we think the best direction to go.
Okay.
Because I think I'm going to use a word that's a little too frivolous, but the willy-nilly placement of the statue, I would never recommend that. I think it needs to be very thoughtful, and it has urban design considerations, and it actually takes up a lot of mass and height, and from an urban design standpoint, it has to be in the right location.
Also ecologically, as it relates to birds and what it does, you don't want to put it next to something where vultures are going to live and then attack prey, right? There's a lot of considerations.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. My point is, whether or not it has financial value, there is some emotional value to it in the city. Some love it, some hate it. I understand that, but I don't want it to get forgotten and not dealt with. And I know that's not where you're at with it, but I just wanted to put that out there so we can keep going with it. Okay. Any other council comments? What's next? All right, we don't have anybody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We do have a closed session this evening, so I will recess from here, and like I said, we'll pick up in closed session in chambers.